Hi, teammates. This is Sean J. McCall as usual, and you are here for this episode of the Eurostep. Looking forward to this one. Got someone coming on that I really respect what he does because he does what I do. But I'll get to that in a second. But make sure if you have any questions for us, especially today. What is this white stuff on my hand? Oh, from my wall. Um, if you have any questions, then hit the comment button there. You can throw your question in there, and I'll see it. Or if you don't want everybody else to see it, just hit the question mark with the speech bubble, and I will eventually get to your question for sure. So, Jose Colorado is my guest for this episode. A man after my own heart who educates players. He is a former pro. Actually, I don't even know. Are you still playing, Jose? I'll ask you that in a minute. But someone asked me when I publicized this, why would I have the competition on my show? And I don't look at it like that at all. I mean, there's no competition. We both want to help players, and why wouldn't I have him on the show? I mean, I thought that was the most stupid thing ever. As long as I'm helping someone and I know someone else is helping them, that's what I'm all about. And I'm sure Jose would say the same. The more the merrier. I appreciate the work that he does. He's got a style all his own, and we're going to get into that as well. So I learn from him. I ask him questions. Sometimes he asks me questions. So it's all good in the hood. Let's get him in here. No further ado. Hold on. Nope, not there. Sorry. We're going to get Jose in here. So, Joshua, I see your question. I'll get that in there. And there he is, the man, the myth, the legend.
What up, Sean? How are you?
What's good, man?
What's good, man? How's everything?
Everything's good here, man. Just living the life, man.
Hey, that's a funny comment that you made. They said, "Why would you put in the competition in the same live with you?" That's a crazy thought.
No,
it's crazy
people really think that.
Yeah, because it's crazy because I was just gonna write a tweet today about that, saying how so many players don't succeed because they have a zero-sum mindset. They think because someone else succeeds that you can't succeed.
Right.
And that's so funny that you just said that today because it just applies right to it.
I mean, it's crazy because we're both doing the same thing. We're both helping athletes. We're helping ballers,
Right.
and there's a million ballers. Some people, I'm not their cup of tea for sure. You know what I'm saying? So I'll be glad to send somebody your way that doesn't like how I do my thing. You know what I'm saying? And I know you would do vice versa the same. So there's no competition. It's just we're doing the same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
No competition for me. So man, I really appreciate you coming on tonight and being a part of the pod. There should be a conversation. I know I sent you the picture with all my questions, but I do that for every show. I don't get through 25% of the questions that I write down because it just kind of flows, right? So just say your piece. We're going to talk a little bit about your background, how you got started, work our way through your journey and stuff like that, and then we'll get some information out there that the people hopefully can learn from. It's going to go pretty quick probably. So I'm looking forward to it. So let's get started. Can you introduce yourself really shortly, and then we'll get right into it?
Sure. So I'm Jose Colorado. I played 6 years professionally.
Are you still playing?
Yeah, I remember because right now I'm kind of in between because I just got injured in 2021, and then I rehabbed, and then with COVID in between, and I'm not sure. I'm semi-retired right now, so I'm not sure if there's a shorter season, and I am a bit older too, so I'm 33 years old. So I'm kind of in between right now. I'm not sure if I want to keep going or I'm really enjoying what I'm doing now, helping players and helping them achieve their goals. But either way, I played 6 years professionally, played the majority of that in Latin America, played in the Basketball Champions League of the Americas. That was in Brazil. Played in Germany, where you're at, played in El Salvador. And then during that time as well, I also had a couple of other things that I did, like writing and working online and all of these other things as well. And then now I've kind of transitioned and trying to help players succeed in overseas basketball. And my main thing is that, I guess my main niche, I would say, is I'm trying to help players who aren't necessarily like the top level player,
Right.
rookies and beginners, guys from
Right.
small colleges.
Right.
Because I think a lot of times there's this misconception that if you didn't come from a big major school, or if you're not playing in the top professional league, then it's just not a viable career path for you. But that couldn't be further from the truth. And it's just, I think it's like we were mentioning earlier, there's just not enough information out there for players. So that's something that I really want to push out now to players. And that's kind of like my mission right now. So that's where I'm at. Long story short.
Good. I mean, that's a wonderful thing, man. I wish there were more people out there that were interested in helping. I think now with social media, it's a little bit better. As far as like, I'm an old head, so it was a little bit different when I was playing in the dinosaur ages of European basketball. People tended to keep their secrets for themselves. Like, there were no old heads that guided me, and that was part of my reason why I decided to write the book, first of all, and also to help players, because especially in this day and age, there's so much information that you can access, but if you don't know where to start, it's tough. And especially like you said, the guys that are at small colleges, NAIAs, D2s, D3s, mid-major D1s, they don't have agents knocking on their door, and so it's like, okay, well, what the hell do I do? How do I do it? So that's why I'm really glad that you're on the show today. That's why I'm really glad you do what you do. I know a couple of other people that do what we do, but in my opinion, you and I are the only ones that really do it consistently. Some people, they make a post here and there, then they have their normal 9 to 5. I also have my normal 9 to 5, but I think you and I are pretty much the only ones that really do it on a consistent basis. And I think some more will come around for sure. I see some other books being written and things like that, but I welcome. So let's talk about your college background. You went from, I read on your page, you went from 0 scholarships to being a professional, right?
Yeah.
So how did you get your start after having zero offers in college? How did that work out?
Yeah, so kind of that's been my story. My whole career is been very under recruited. Had to kind of like fight and claw my way up in every level. So essentially what happened after high school was that even though I was one of the top scorers in the region, didn't really have any offers. So then I walked on to a local university, and I quit maybe like 2 or 3 months into that season. And then at the end of the season, I started to miss basketball again, so I wanted to get into it again. So I only had one offer really through my high school coach, who then became an assistant coach at another university. Okay. So I moved across Canada, went there, played 4 years there, and I became the all-time leading scorer at that school. But again, very small level, like small college school. The school, actually, the athletic program doesn't even exist anymore. Wow. Like, it just folded up. They didn't have enough funding. Wow. They didn't have anything, right? So that just goes to show you, like, that was kind of like my backstory. I have to climb up the ranks. And then after college, that's when I really didn't have an idea of how to get on overseas. For the most part, I was trying to do what a lot of players do. You just kind of shoot out messages to agents, shoot out messages to teams.
Paste.
Yeah, and you don't know who you're messaging. I'm messaging teams in like Spain, ACB, and there's not a chance in hell they're going to even look at the message, let alone respond, let alone, it's not even going to get to the coach, you know what I mean? So I had no idea what I was doing. But eventually what happened was I had a connection in the league that I played in. So in that college league, I had one connection, and he played on the El Salvador national team. So I made sure that I connected with him. I tried to go through their coach, and they said, hey, can I have his email? I got his email. And then he connected me with the national team coach of El Salvador. And at the time, I wanted to play for the El Salvador national team, but I couldn't because in FIBA, there's a rule where only one player who is marked can play on the national team. And in El Salvador, because usually the population is a bit smaller, they have one guy who's like 7'3" from Los Angeles, an American Salvadorian. So every single tournament, they're bringing him because he's got to shore up the middle for the defense. Right. So there's no way they're going to choose me. But he said, I can't get you on the national team, but let me try to get you into the domestic pro league. And like, let me put you in contact with the El Salvador coaches there. And, he sent it out to all of them, and only one coach responded to me. So I said, hey, I only got one
Let's go.
interest, so that's where I'm going to double down on. That's where I'm going to try and get my start in. And that's basically how it started, from 0 college offers, 0 offers out of high school. And then eventually I got one pro offer, and that was the one I took with. And then after that, it was just like built. That's, once you get into it, that's like half of the battle right there, is you got to get in, and then you got to kill. And then if you kill, then sure enough, you build up your experience, connections, and then you just keep on going from there.
I think that's really great what you said, because getting that foot in the door is the hardest part.
Yeah.
That's definitely the hardest part. If you're not a D1 G League guy or something like that, that first entry is really crucial. And a lot of players don't understand it. Yeah, you can send those emails out, but it's not going to be a snowball's chance in hell that a lot of teams are going to take interest in.
Jump. Yeah.
But that's the thing, is once you get your foot in the door, if you don't hoop, it's a wrap. It's going to be a wrap, right? You get that you get one chance.
Yeah, and that's like one thing I've done a lot of videos on, that is just the expectation of once you actually get a deal, like you got to play with so much urgency once you actually get that deal. And some players come in, and that's the crazy thing. Some of them, this is why it's so important that players actually get educated on the markets, because like in Latin America, I came in and I was thinking I was just going to be like a spot up shooter, kind of like coming off screen, spot up shooter, kind of like what I did in college, in university. But their nationals, like, they're not really giving them much. So there I became like essentially like the second option on the team, because there was always another national matched up with me, and I was almost always going to get the better of that matchup. So that's why I became so valuable in that market. But you just have to understand where you are. If you come to Europe and say you're playing in like second division in Germany, and you think, oh, I'm going to come in and drop 30 a game, it's probably not going to go that way. If you're an American, you got to actually blend in a bit more and understand the market expectation. Mm-hmm. So, that's another crazy thing that you got to think, like, once you get that contract, okay, what do they actually expect out of me? What do they want from me?
Did you, when you were back in college, did you reach out to agents as well? You said you reached out to teams. You're coming from a small school, things like that, so nobody's really knocking on your door. Did you try to reach out to agents before you went to El Salvador?
Yeah, I tried to, but no one took a chance.
It's hard.
On me. Even Canadian agents, they didn't take a chance on me, because the level that I played at is called CCAA in Canada. Essentially, it's like the college level for the States. It's like NEI. Maybe like some of the better ones are like Division III level, or a bit lower. And then there's a level above that called U Sports, and that's like our NCAA D1. Mm-hmm. So I didn't play in U Sports. So the majority of the Canadian agents, they wanted players who came from U Sports. So when I said, hey, I averaged 22 points or 21 points in CCAA, they'll be like, well, this guy averaged 18 in U Sports, so I'm going with this guy. You know what I mean? Because it's a better competition level.
That's the thing that a lot of people also don't realize. There's going to be guys from NAIAs, D2s, lower universities that get jobs. I mean, there's countless guys that are actually making really fucking good money right now that went to really small schools. But I always, when I speak to clients or prospective clients, I always play a little bit the devil's advocate. I'm a GM. I'm a German GM. I know the best talent level is D1. The best talent level is D1. Why would I go to a D3 and scout a D3 player unless he's a D3 All-American when I know I can get the 9th, 10th guy from Kentucky, plays in SEC. Great competition. So what they don't realize is that the scouts are not only scouting you as a basketball player, but they're also scouting the competition that you played against. Yeah. So it's like, okay, what is that level? Okay, I know SEC is a known entity. I might be able to get the 9th guy at Kentucky. They had great practice facilities. They have great talent around them. So that 9th player might be better than somebody that's a D2, D3 player averaging 6 points a game. Mm-hmm. That's the devil advocate, right? But you got to push through that. You got to push through that and prove that you belong, even though you are from a lower university, lower college, things like that.
And one way for, just to like build on that point, one way that I found, especially for small college players, to get around that is if you ever play out of conference games, like say, for instance, I played sometimes because we were so close to the border, we would go to Portland, we'd go to Washington, we play NA D1 teams, D2, we play NAI teams. I would always use that game tape on my films when I would send it to college coaches and to agents, because it can essentially act as like a reference point. Like, okay, you don't know what league I play in, CCAA, but you do know what the NCAA Division II is and what that level may be, or what the D1 level is.
Right.
So if I show you that I scored 20 points on that D1 team, then that's going to give you at least some ballpark idea of my ability, that I'm playing against this level of standard of players. So that's like one way that I would always try to get around it. Whenever I played those games, I would make sure I always message the coaches after, and I tried to get the film afterwards, because yeah, it is hard, because if you're coming from some obscure league, I always get messages from teams, or sorry, I always get messages from players, and they'll sometimes say like, hey, I averaged blank blank in this league, and I have like no idea what the league is, and there's no reference point for me. I don't understand. So does that mean you're like 7th division in Germany? Does that mean you're 2nd division in Germany? I don't know. And when it comes to coaches and agents, they're just probably not even gonna waste the time with that. If they don't know what the reference point is, if they don't know like what the baseline is, then they're probably just like, yo, I don't know, bro. I'm out, not even responding to it. You know what I mean?
How did you decide to become a consultant? I know you started your blog first. That's how I found you, actually, was through your blog. How did you, was it kind of like a slow process, or was this something you knew you wanted to do?
Yeah, the big thing that I saw was, this was the main reason, was because when I was playing in El Salvador, it's a pretty low level market, low money for the most part. Like you can get, it depends, like whatever is your standard, right? What's your skill level and whatever, it's all relative. But when I was there, I remember I would be out earning players who were like 2 or 3 times the player that I was. And they went D1, they went D2, guys who went to like Morehead State and I don't know, just all these mid-major programs. And I would always think like, how is it possible that this guy's earning half of what I'm earning, yet he's 3 times the player that I am, just thinking objectively. And then that's when I started to understand that players don't actually understand how to market themselves. They don't understand where their strengths are. They don't understand where their value is, how valuable the passport is, how they can actually become an asset, like where their playing style actually matches. So that's when I started to see like, oh, there's actually like a huge market for this, because a lot of these players don't actually understand how to make themselves become valuable and how to make overseas basketball like a profitable and real career choice. Not just something that you go overseas for 2 months and then you say, oh, I play pro, and then you go back to your 9 to 5 and you're done. You know, like I want players to think that this is actually a profitable career path that you can follow for many, many years. And then the great thing is, as you know, after you're done playing, then there's so many different avenues that open up for you, because there's so many benefits to playing. Like you can become a coach, a consultant, you can document your journey on YouTube or on a blog or anything like that. You can get brand sponsorships now in today's age. You can build off your social media. Like there's so many different things that you can do, but so many players back then didn't understand that. So that was like the main reason why I wanted to try and help players. And the biggest culprit that I see is when players, like there was one player or there was multiple players and they have citizenship in a high paying country, but then they want to go play as an import in a country that probably plays less or the same. It's like, dude, why? Just go to where you're a national, a local, you have more security, there's not as much expectations, kill it, and then you're going to 5x your value there because you're a local and you're not an import, and imports are dime a dozen. So it was like stuff like that that really got me thinking, and that's why I tried to, help players out a bit more.
What are some challenges you find? What are some of the challenges that you find educating players? Let me tell you mine.
Yeah.
One of the biggest challenges that I get is that players, and I tell this to people all the time, players are the worst evaluators of their own talent. It's not even fun. It's not even close. Players all think that they are NBA guys. They're one step away from NBA. They just had a bad break. no, stop. Like that's like the balance. Sometimes the balance. And the crazy thing is, I can tell how they talk to me, what kind of player they are. I can. I don't have to look at highlight tapes. I don't have to do all of that. I ask a couple of questions usually, and I can kind of figure it out, right? So finding the balance between wanting to help somebody and actually maybe for the first time in their life, telling them they're maybe not as good as they think they are, and to bring those expectations down, that's tough for me personally. That's really tough because I definitely want to help, and I definitely want to help somebody reach their dreams, and it's not impossible for anybody that's played on any level. I truly believe that. But sometimes guys tell me, yeah, okay, how much do you want to make? Yeah, at least 10,000 a month. Dude, come on, dude. If you're talking to me right now, you're probably not making 10,000 a month, dude. Yeah. You got no agent. Come on, dude. Come on. Be realistic. Like that. And sometimes if I'm in a bad mood, then I might be a little bit of a dick in my answer. Just like, come on, like really be realistic. But that's my thing. Like I have a real problem with trying to balance helping somebody and pushing them, and also at the same time being realistic, because I think they need that as well.
Yeah. I would think that's definitely one. And another one for me is players understanding long-term, because it seems like if it doesn't work out in the first year, then a lot of players will just be like, oh, I'm out. Or like, for instance, the biggest one that jumps to my mind is when people, they come with very little college experience, maybe a year or a year or two, or they maybe not even have any. They may only play semi-pro basketball, and they'll say, okay, Jose, how do I play overseas? And I say, well, essentially there's only like 3 options. Either you can literally go overseas and like uproot your whole life, commit wholeheartedly to it, get a job, get a visa, go somewhere, live there, and then go and try out for teams. That's one way. Or another way is you have to actually build up your resume and build up your playing experience locally in your local leagues. Like say, for instance, if you're American, there's so many semi-pro leagues there. There's so many domestic professional leagues now in the USA, like the NBLC, and in Canada, there's CEBL, and there's different ones like that. And that's one way that you can do it and build up your resume that way. But a lot of players will just be like, well, okay, I have maybe 1 year of college experience, but I'm going to go to this academy that costs $1,500 for like 1 week of playing. And it's like really? You think that's the best way to spend it? Like you're going to put everything all in one
basket,
one basket, one situation. So, that's the biggest thing, is like thinking long-term for them. And some guys, they'll come to me after college, or they'll come to me after high school, and they'll have everything lined up, like great nationalities, like 3 different nationalities. They're French, they're Canadian, they have Mexican descent or something. So they can be like a local in 3 different leagues.
Right. And
then they'll say, I want to go pro right now versus going to college for 4 years. And it's like, dude, why? Just think long term. Nothing is going to compare to the amount of respect you get from going to an NCAA program for 4 years. And then afterwards, you're going to be able to get your value up 3x, 4x, 5x. But if you just go straight out of high school and then like you're just getting dogged in those leagues for years, then you're eventually going to just cap out at a certain ceiling. So, that's the biggest thing for me, is understanding long term. That's the whole thing. Because I think people think in these terms of like, yes, there is athletic mortality, obviously. Right. Yes, you can only play so long. Like that is true, of course. But at the same time, you have to think long term in that this is a viable career path for you. You could realistically play until you're like 33, 34 if you have everything lined up properly. So that could be like a 10-year window. Yeah. And the other thing is that with overseas, like say you only have a 10-year window, but if you are actually doing it right and you have like a side hustle or you have some other job going for you and they're paying for all your accommodations, in those 10 years, your life is going to completely change. You're going to be able to pay off all of your debt. You're going to be able to get enough for a down payment for a house. You're going to be able to, whatever you want to do, it's going to completely change within those 10 years. So that's why I'm trying to get them to understand, like, okay, think long-term though in this whole thing. Don't just think like, oh, I went to Italy for 1 month they cut me, but hey, I was an overseas basketball player once upon a time. It's like, dude, why? Like, what are you doing it for realistically? Are you doing it for the clout, or are you doing this because you actually think that this could be a career path for you?
I think that's a good point, what you said about, thinking long term. And a lot of players don't think, okay, let's say you make €1,000 somewhere, right? That doesn't sound like a lot. It's like, ooh,
yeah,
okay, that's not a lot. I can make more than that working at Burger King back home. But what they don't realize is you're not thinking about the things that you don't have to pay for. And I think that's a huge misunderstood part of this game by players. Okay, you're making a flat salary of 1,000, but maybe you've got 2 meals a day, which keeps money in your pocket, because smaller leagues, they're more apt to, they know they don't have things like that, so they give you extra things such as meals, or you're not paying for your rent. You're not, let's say your rent is $500 a month in your apartment. You're not paying for that. You're not paying for the insurance on your rent. You're not paying for your car. You're not paying for the insurance on your car. You're not paying for electricity. You're not paying for heat. You're not paying for water. You're not paying for gas. You're like, there's so much that you're not paying for that 1,000 that you're making is actually, if you added it all together, I did it in my book as well. If you add it all together, you're making like 2,500, 3,000 if you add all of that together, which you're not paying for. So technically, that 1,000 is for entertainment. It's for maybe your cell phone, maybe your internet if the club doesn't provide it, some food maybe, and going out, hanging out. Who's to say if you have $1,000 every month, you can't save 500? Now take that 500 over 10 years. Then things look different. Of course, you're not going to always make 1,000 for 10 years. Yeah. Hopefully, you do your job, you get better, you're going to make more money, you can start saving more. But I think that's the thing, like you said, they don't think long term. Like, okay, like I could parlay this into something more. I have plenty of off time. I can do other things. I can have a side hustle. I can do this. I can do that. They just think, okay, I got a contract for $1,000 in Austria. I'm not feeling it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And the interesting thing about that was when I had my job, so I was working full time beforehand, before I played overseas. And there eventually became a point in my career when I was working online and playing overseas. And there became a point when they said, okay, either you have to move here permanently or you have to quit the job. This is what my actual job said when I was writing for them. And so I broke down the math and I was like, okay, what makes me more money? And I actually looked at it, and based on the differences of all the expenses I had, rent, food, electricity, utilities, all these different things, going out, social, I made more money playing overseas basketball and even taking on a lesser job. Like say I just got like another side job with it. I saved way more money than I ever did with my full-time job. And that full-time job was like $70,000, something like that at the time. So that just shows you, like, if you're really committed to it, and then if you're smart and you have a side hustle, that's why I always really push for the side hustles for players. If you have all of that going for you, then it really is a viable career path if you think long-term with it. But that's like the key though, because not everyone's going to play in the first division. In fact, probably less than 1% are going to play in the first division in these top leagues. So you have to be realistic of your mindset and how you can still make it profitable for you in the long term.
Let me ask one of the questions that have been posed on here. Explain to these players as well about being professional off the court, learning about the culture you're playing in, and being respectful. That was from E. Perry 88. What you got on that?
E. Perry. No, that's a really good question. Yeah, that's huge, because if you can be liked by your teammates, if you can be liked by your ownership, by the coaching staff, then that's really going to go a far way. A lot of times what you'll see is a lot of Americans, it's really interesting. They'll go to another country across the world and they'll start ordering American food, or they're staying in the room all day. And it's like, bro, why? You're right now in Japan and you're ordering McDonald's like day in and day out. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. So No, just understand if people can really pick up on it if you are actually invested in learning about their culture, if you're respectful about their culture, if you want to actually conduct yourself as a professional, then they're going to pick up on it pretty quickly. And those things go a long way with teams, of course, because then I'll give you a quick example. Like when I went to El Salvador, at first I was just playing basketball, but pretty quickly they could see that I was really invested into the team, into the club, into the community. I would help out in the community from time to time. And then they actually opened up an academy, and I was like spearheading the whole academy, the coaching academy. So that's how I made like a substantial amount of my money, was doing that. So it just shows you that they can actually, like, it can lead to other opportunities. If they see that you are a professional, then they're going to say, oh, this guy embodies what we want to be known as. So we're gonna actually actively go and try and create opportunities for him. I know another guy in Germany who that happened to him as well. He came in originally just playing basketball and that's it. And then they actually opened up a coaching academy for him, and he's been there for like 7-8 years. So, you know, it happens all throughout the world, but you really got to, like, that word professionalism, it can really go a long way.
Yeah. What, how do you keep yourself updated on trends that are going on in European basketball or basketball overseas, period? How do you keep yourself fresh and coming up with ideas and things that can help? How do you keep yourself, you know, viable?
In terms of, like, if you're playing on the team?
No, for you personally, like what you do as a consultant, how do you keep yourself fresh with ideas and noticing trends and things like that?
Well, that's the thing. If you want to get into overseas basketball, you actually have to pay attention to what the leagues are doing, and you have to get into the network. The most powerful thing is always going to be your network. If you actually know coaches, know media, know agents, know players in these markets, that's going to trump anything else that you read on the internet or what you read on YouTube or what you watch on YouTube or anything like that. So that would be my biggest piece of advice. If you want to actually be up on the trends and understand what's happening in all these different markets, then you actually have to interact with the basketball community. Yeah. You actually have to serve and talk with these people and see what's happening in these different markets.
One thing that kind of one of my pet peeves when I talk to people, I'll usually bring up something about Eurobasket.com. And it is amazing how many players have absolutely no idea what Eurobasket.com is. Like, they're like, what website is that? And I'm like, yo, that's like the overseas Bible. Like, you have to be on that all the time to notice who's getting picked up, who's signing, who just got fired, things like that. And I get it. When you're home, when you're in America, you're in Canada, wherever, your focus is on that. But if you think about, okay, I want to play overseas, then you have to immerse yourself in everything that entails that, right? So that's one of my pet peeves. Like, dog, if you don't know what Eurobasket is, like, that's like the most basic thing you need to know, that you need to be looking at every day at different countries that you think you might want to play at that might help you advance yourself, right? So that it always amazes me how little in these days and age of the internet and the information that is accessible at your fingertips, how little some people know. Yeah. And that one thing drives me nuts.
And I think a lot of it comes down to a lot of players. It was like the point you said earlier about how for the first time you maybe telling a player that they're not as good as they think they are. I don't think a lot of players understand just how competitive overseas basketball is. And they almost expect, like, okay, I was an all-star in college, so I'll definitely get an agent, or someone's going to represent me, and someone's going to take care of all this back-end stuff that I don't want to do. I just want to play basketball. And ideally, that's what we would all want to do. We just want to play basketball. But for the vast majority of players, that's not the situation. That's not going to be the reality. So that's why you, like you said, you actually have to take the initiative and pick up on these things and immerse yourself. Exactly.
It's another thing that always astounds me when I talk to, especially players that just finished college. They're 23, 24 years old, and they think okay, I'm just going to go over there and I'm going to hoop. But what they don't realize is I live in Germany. Germany has done an excellent job over the last 10 to 15 years in developing their own players. And the dependence on foreign players has gotten less and less every year. And because of that, they have a 24-year-old that's just as good as you. They don't have to pay crazy taxes for that player. It's a home player. There's a sense of identity for the fans. Why do I need a 22, 23-year-old guy from America when I got a 22, 23-year-old guy here that can do just the same, right? So it's not only the competition that they're facing from other Americans, other Canadians, other Brazilians, or whatever. It's the competition that they're facing from the local players. And that's what a lot of things that people take for granted. Like, okay, I'm going to go and hoop, but hey, yo, you're hooping against established players. Your competition is new players coming out of school. Your competition is established local players. Your competition is young and upcoming local players. Like, it's not as easy as people think to come over here and just start hooping. It's really not. Have you seen a lot of players that really think, okay, it's easy?
I think a lot of them just don't understand, like I was saying earlier, like the market expectation. Because, like you said, that's the thing. Because if the locals are at a lower level or a certain level, then that's essentially what you have to base yourself upon. Because, okay, for instance, like in Latin America, in some of those leagues, let's say in Central America, in some of those leagues, the locals are at a lower level. So they're going to expect you to dominate if you come in as an import. You're going to have to score 25 to 30 points. Or if you're a big guy, you're going to have to get like 10 points, 15 rebounds, 5 blocks, whatever. Versus if you come to Germany or you go to one of these European countries, you have to understand the market expectation too. Because if you're averaging, or if you say you just fulfill your role as, say you're a big guy and they have no bigs on your German team, then that's the way that you can excel in that role. But if you're coming in and you're thinking that you're going to get all the shots, then that's going to be a problem, obviously. Yeah. So that's why people, I think it's kind of like on both spectrums. Some people don't understand the extreme expectations on certain markets, like in the Middle East or in Latin America, or sometimes in Asia. And then some people kind of like overvalue their expectations or what they're supposed to do. You know, like a team from Germany, like in Regional, I think it was Regional 1, they recently messaged me and they were wondering if I would come play with them. And they were saying, oh, we saw your videos and we saw how you said there's a lot of expectations on foreigners, on imports, but don't worry, you wouldn't have to do any of that. All you would have to do is come in and just kind of like run the offense, pass it around, and hit open shots. So if you establish something like that, then it's going to be much more easier coming into it versus if you're coming in, you don't really know what's even expected of you. And then all of a sudden you start clashing with your coach, you start clashing with your teammates. Maybe you can't really even speak the language that well, so they're already going to start siding with their nationals and their locals, and then that creates a whole nother different set of problems for you.
I mean, I've written about this as well, like depending on the level of the country, the expectations on the foreigners are different. So if you're coming over to Germany and playing in the sixth league, the Oberliga, you're an American. You're probably the only American. You better be putting up 30 points a game. Like there, you better be serving hot dogs at halftime. Like you got to do it all, right? But the higher up you go, the I wouldn't say the less of an expectation, but you're more expected to fill a role. Yeah. So if you're on a first league team in Germany, there's guys making really good money in the first league Germany that are averaging 8 points a game because the dependency on foreign players also is lower. And then the coaches are they know what they want. They want a player to fit this role. So I'm going to go to this agent. I'm going to say, when I coached in the first league, it was like, okay, I've got 3 agents that I really trust that know exactly the type of players I'm looking for, and I'm not looking at anybody else. They know not to send me 10,000 guys. They're going to send me 2, right? And then it saves me time. So I'm telling my agent friend, look, I need a 3-man that can guard every position on the floor, athletic, and yeah, 6'6", around 6'6", hopefully, and up, right? For my two guard, I have a totally different role. I want him to score. I want him to come off screen. So I'm telling my agents exactly what I want, and then they're going to send me those profiles of exactly what I want. So it's the higher you go, it's usually the less of an expectation you have to score 30.
Yeah.
But you better fill that role. If your role is 8 points a game, don't come at 4. If your role is 3 and D, then you better do that, or they will find somebody else that will.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's really well put. Completely true. Yeah.
What are maybe the biggest factors for you, for someone who wants to come overseas, that they need to be prepared for?
Number one would be, okay, so just to get overseas in general, I would say number one, the first thing, the biggest thing I always say, and I know you know this, is the passport.
Yeah.
Understanding FIBA regulations. With FIBA leagues, FIBA teams only designate a certain amount of spots for foreigners and imports. So that's the first thing you have to understand, because players, a lot of time, this is what I thought when I was in college, you'll play well and you say, hey, I want to go play in the Dominican Republic. And you think that they just select the 12 best players like they do in college. Right. It doesn't matter if they're Canadian, American, German, it doesn't matter. Just give me the 12 best players and let's go. That's our team. But that's not how it works in FIBA. So if there's 12 roster spots, maybe only, let's say there's 2 or 3 open to foreigners and imports. So there's not actually 12 roster spots. In the whole league, say there's 10 teams, then there's going to be 30 roster spots open. There's not 100 plus roster spots open. So that's the biggest thing you have to understand. And that's why the competition is so fierce in overseas basketball, because there's so many Americans and there's so many foreigners in general who can play, who are very good. But the thing is, can you play as a foreigner, and can you play in the overseas expectations of that market, of wherever you're going? So that would be the biggest thing. And then the second thing I would say is you have to understand the passport regulations, and then you also have to understand the expectations. Like we were just saying earlier, different markets require different things. And just like you said very perfectly, the higher up you go in the tier system, the more you fill a role, but you better fill the role correctly and not miss in that regard. And then the third thing I would say also is, like we were mentioned earlier, with the language and the cultural aspects, you have to try to integrate yourself a bit more in the team and in the culture, because those things do matter. And a lot of players think it's trying to get away from this mindset of, oh, I can hoop and that's just going to guide me through everything. You know, I drop 30 a game and that's it. Because I've seen guys who average 30 a game, but they're acting up at nighttime, wilding out, and they get cut. So it's, you know, it's not enough. So you've got to be able to actually hold yourself in a professional manner. And there's different ways that you can do that. So those are, I would say, are the 3 biggest things. Now, all of this obviously is under the expectation that you're good enough. Yeah. Like that's the baseline. That's the precursor.
That you can actually hoop.
That you can actually play. And defining actually playing is different. And that's why you have to be realistic in your expectation. You also have to be conscious of how good are you actually, because like you were mentioning earlier, a lot of players think they're better than what they actually are. So like, for instance, I got a message from a guy who said he played in my level in college, CCAA, and he said, and I did a video on Japan, on the Asian basketball leagues, like some of the highest paying leagues in the world, right? Taiwan, China, Japan. And he says, and he was asking me, how can I get in Japan? And then I said, oh, did you go D1? Like, where did you play or whatever? And he said, oh, I played here and I averaged like 6 or 7 points. So 6 or 7 points there is not going to cut it anywhere in Japan. Not B1, not B2, not B3. It's one of the most lucrative and coveted markets in the world. So, but that's not to speak down on that player, that there isn't a spot to him somewhere in overseas basketball. Like you could start in the 7th division in Germany and then work your way up. Maybe his ceiling is only 4th division in Germany, Regionalliga 1. But at least you are living your dream. And if you have all these other things like we were mentioning, side hustles, you're professional, and you stack up your money over years, then it's still very profitable. It's still a very viable career path. So, you know, that's like the thing that I see. Sometimes when I post these videos, you'll get you'll get commenters. I think a lot of them are honestly quite young, and they don't even understand, like, oh, you only made $3,000 in this level, and oh, if you didn't play first division in Serbia, you're nothing. It's like, dude, who cares? Like, whatever is your ceiling is your ceiling.
Wow.
And at the end of the day, you're living your dream. You're living your life how you want to, and you're pushing all of your life goals forward. So that's the thing with me, like getting away from that mindset of just, it's first division in Europe or nothing, or it's EuroLeague or nothing. And that's the stupidest mindset, I think, because
that's crazy.
It's not going to be realistic for everyone.
I got a question. Where was that? What's the average age limit where your ball career ends, and what are transition careers? I'll say I got to get a quick story about the age thing. I think there's no age up limit. I had one client, she's not in here right now, but she's usually here. I had my very first client, actually. She was 37 years old when we met and we started working together. She was a doctor. She's a PhD. She worked in a hospital. She took a year sabbatical because she wanted to fulfill her dream. She played in college. She was a good college player, but of course life hits you fast. She does her master's. She gets a PhD. She's working in a hospital. You know how it is. But she never gave up that dream of playing overseas.
Yeah.
So she took a year sabbatical, hit me up and said, how do I get overseas? This woman did everything and more than what I asked her to do. She got a job for $250 a month in the third league in Portugal, the first year. She was happy as I don't know what. She was thrilled with that $250. Of course, she made more money in her normal job, of course.
Yeah.
But she was living her dream. She ended up extending her sabbatical and then playing in the second league. She was making like $400 a month. And by the time it was all said and done, she was 38 years old, and she played a year and a half overseas in the second league in Portugal, third league and second league in Portugal. And then she went back to her 9-to-5. She went back to her hospital job, and she's dope. She's dope as hell. And that's the thing is, of course, the more advanced age you are, the more difficult it's going to be, because why am I going to take, if I'm a devil's advocate, why am I going to take a 35-year-old guy that's got multiple gap years, hasn't played since high school, hasn't played since JUCO, when I can get a 22, 23-year-old just out of college? That's clear. So the higher age you are, of course, the more difficult it's going to be. But I think there's no age limit. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think there's an age limit. There's just a skill limit.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good way to put it.
If you are good enough, they will take a chance on you just based on how good you are. And, just touching upon that point about being older and playing, I've actually had like teams and agents and teams personally to me say how, we want an older player. We don't want a guy who's just a rookie, because he's not going to be used to the culture. He's not going to be used to the adaptations that may happen. He may get culture shock. So sometimes age can actually play a factor in benefiting you. Like if you're an older player, then teams may look at that and say, he's a bit more seasoned. He knows what he wants, and he's just kind of on his grind now. He's on his path. He knows what it means to be a professional.
Right.
But yeah, I think realistically, age does obviously play some sort of role, because it is, like we were mentioning, like there is some sort of mortality in athletics. You can only play for so long, and your athletic prime is only going to last so long. But if you do these other things, then there's ways to get around it, I would say. But in terms of like the other spectrum, like younger players, a lot of them ask, is there an age limit to when you can play professionally? And I think honestly that there isn't, because you see in Europe all the time, there's kids who are like 14 or 15, 16, and they may be playing in like third or fourth division with grown men who are like 25, 26, and they're just getting their start in overseas basketball. So as long as you're good enough, I think teams will take a chance on you.
And especially the lower league teams. Lower league teams
Yeah.
are way more adept to taking a chance on someone, whether it be someone that's older or someone that hasn't played in a couple years, or because of course sometimes they don't want to pay agent fees, so they're looking specifically for guys or girls that have not played overseas that maybe they can take a chance on. That it happens all the time, especially in lower divisions.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask a question from Made You Look. I think you know who that is. Can you talk about player development for coaches and how versatility players need to be to succeed in overseas basketball?
How versatile they need to
Right.
be. Yeah, so I would say that goes hand in hand for hand in hand what we were speaking with earlier in terms of you have to be more than just a basketball player. Like I wrote this tweet a while ago saying how you think you're just a basketball player, but you're not. You're your own publicist, manager, PR person, business manager, all of these different things. So you have to look outside of just hooping for a long and fruitful career, because if you can actually add different things to the table, like say for instance we were saying earlier about having a different skill or having a different language that you can speak. If you can bring that, then you're going to be able to communicate better with the locals, communicate better with the coaching staff, everyone. And then that can parlay itself into other opportunities such as coaching, or maybe I've even seen teams set up players because they like them so much. They've set them up with like, they become English translators.
Right.
Like jobs like that. Right. Or they put them in a call. I remember in Latin America, in El Salvador, they would always put these players in call centers, and they would put them in and they would be working there for like 5-6 hours a day, and then they would go to practice at nighttime.
That's dope.
And that was the way that they like doubled their income in that way. So if you can, the thing is, if you become more well-rounded, it's like having that entrepreneurial mindset. You're not just a basketball player, but you're an entrepreneur. You're your own business. So if you can adopt that, then there's going to be more opportunities. And I think players are starting to see that more and more and shift more towards that, especially because now in the NCAA with like the NIL deals, that's kind of like taken over, and that players see, oh, okay, if I can actually like leverage this sports thing, maybe I don't make it to the NBA, but I'm still going to be able to leverage this into other opportunities. So it's the same thing in overseas basketball. The same principles apply.
Yeah. Simon Chamberlain asked, is a player's most recent stats film mainly what's scrutinized, or are you expected to have a resume of multiple seasons with good numbers? That's a good question.
Ooh, what do you think?
Of course, if you're just coming out of college, you don't have the resume. So they're looking basically, what have you done for me lately? Where did you play? What level did you play? Et cetera, et cetera. If you've been overseas before, then of course, college falls away. They're only looking at what your last job did, or maybe your last 2 jobs. But it's not only about stats. It's like you said, you got to be a very, very well-rounded person. You've got to be respectful. You've got to be doing other things besides hooping. So it's a fairly difficult question to answer because there's so many factors, and it takes a lot of luck. It takes a lot of luck. Just because you have an agent doesn't mean it increases your chance of getting a job if you have an agent, right? Because they have access to jobs that maybe you as a normal person would not know. But there's no guarantee that your agent will get you a job. It takes a lot of luck because they've got 2 people for the same job. You're one of them. Then it comes down to, you're both similar players. It comes down to, is that player marketable? Is that player played overseas? Do I know this player? A lot of intangibles then. And sometimes you never know that there were 2 players up for the job. You were one of them.
Yeah.
But they took the other guy for whatever reason, because it's not in your agent's hand. Your agent can put you out there, can present you, maybe with contacts. They can have you come down to the last couple of guys based on their contacts. But the end result is on me as the coach, is on me as the GM, not the agent. Do I think you can fit in my system? 2 guys, similar talent. Then I'm calling coaches. Then I'm looking more at the film. I'm looking at body language in film. I'm looking at, me personally, I looked at crazy things like, how is your demeanor on the bench? Are you kind of like just sitting there chilling? Are you clapping for your guys? How do you come off the floor when somebody subs for you? Like crazy things that that scouts look at that you would have absolutely no idea about.
Yeah.
And so it's not just about stats. Yes, you need good stats. Yes, you would hope you have great things that you've accomplished. But in the end, it's a lot more than that. What do you say?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I'll say that there's kind of ways to get around it too, in that, okay, you have your stats and your film and everything, but the biggest way I would say to get around it is what I call reference points. So there's many different reference points that you can have. So say, for instance, it's you and another person, but you, say Simon Chamberlain, let's say he's from Ireland. I'm not sure where he's actually from, but I think he played at UBC actually in Canada. But let's say he has an Irish citizenship versus an American. Okay, that's one reference point. Boom. Where they're probably going to take Simon right now because he has the passport in place. And then another thing is, if you have like a connection, a mutual connection, who can actually vouch for you. If there's two people and they have the same stats, 20 points, 10 rebounds a game, they both went to U Sports. But one of these guys, the head coach, actually is very good friends with the coach in Portugal. Then they probably are going to go with you because he can actually vouch for you versus this guy who's cold calling him and they don't actually know anything about him outside of the stats, outside of what they present to him. This guy can actually vouch for him in his character, what he's about, his work ethic, all of these different things. And another way you could do it is, say like you have a geographical tie to a location. So for instance, this is what I did when I was in Canada. I played in British Columbia, Canada, and it's near Vancouver. I played in Vancouver, British Columbia. So what happened was there was a team that was there. They're called the Fraser Valley Bandits. And what happened was, out of all the teams in the Canadian League, it's called the CEBL, the first division, I messaged that one team in BC because I knew that I had a geographical connection to them, in that they probably want hometown kids. They probably want guys who actually are in the community for the past 4 or 5 years, and then they can build that relationship with them. So if there's two people, it's me and another guy, and I actually have a geographical tie to the location. Sure enough, what happened? At the start, he said, we can't actually sign you right now because we already signed this other guy. He was also from that area, but he went Division I, like we were saying earlier. I went CCAA, he went Division I. He's been playing in Europe all throughout the place because he has a passport. He's been doing well, whatever. And then he gets cut. And sure enough, I'm the second call that they make. Hey, Jose, we have a game in Niagara Falls. Can you make it this weekend? $700 a game. So it's like those type of things can even oversee or supersede the stats thing. Because if you're just dependent on stats, then it's going to be hard because a lot of guys have stats. Unless you're averaging like Wilt Chamberlain numbers, like 40 and 10, then they might be like, oh, what's this about? But otherwise, there's a lot of guys who average 20 points on 45% shooting. There's a lot of guys who average 25 points on 48% shooting, right? How can you differentiate yourself from them? So those are like some of the reference points and connections that I think players need to be looking at, just to strengthen your case.
You mentioned a word that I use also very frequently, vouching. And I want to talk about agents, and because there's a lot of players don't have agents. Like they don't know how to get in, they have no agents contacting them. So how do I find an agent? For me, the easiest way, the quickest way, the easiest way for players to get a hold of an agent and get an ear from an agent is friend vouching. If you know anybody that's playing overseas, if you know anybody that has an agent, it could be your second, third distant cousin's friend. Hey, hit that guy up and say, hey, look, I'm trying to hoop overseas. I'm looking for an agent. Can you think you can vouch for me? Tell your agent that I'm going to call. You don't have to big me up or anything like that, but can you at least let them know that I'm interested in their services, and that I'll be contacting them either per email or by telephone. And that's the easiest way to get in the door. If somebody that you know has an agent and can vouch for you. The flip side, though, to that, first of all, you never know if that person is actually going to do that. Yeah. You're never going to really know that. I asked Jose, can you hook me up with your agent? If Jose and I play the same position, Jose's probably he's probably not gonna want more competition, especially if I'm good. So you of course, then on the flip side, the players sometimes don't want more competition for jobs, especially if that player is better than them or they see them as a good player. So you never know if the player's actually going to do that. But take a chance. Take a chance. If you don't have agents knocking on your door and you know somebody has an agent, the guy in the summer league that you know, just ask. What's it going to hurt? You're going to write to a bunch of agents anyway. You might as well have somebody at least know who you are before you write. You know.
And that's why, like we were mentioning earlier, getting involved in the basketball community, because there's so many ways you can do that versus just like say you could do your way of saying how, hey, can you hook me up? Can you help me with that agent? Can you put us in contact? And then there's other ways of doing it too, like say there's a basketball academy that's run in your city or or in your neighborhood or in your region, and you know that there's certain connections that those coaches may have played overseas before, or they were in the university system before.
Exactly. Yeah.
The basketball community is so small that there's likely going to be a connection somewhere where it's like, oh, this guy coached me and now he's a coach in the 3rd division in Portugal. And then that connection is going to be way easier to make because now you guys actually built some relationship. There's some rapport. You're not just cold calling them being like, hey, can you hook me up with this guy and he can get me a job? Because I've tried that before, and it's kind of difficult if you don't actually establish some sort of relationship. So that's why I always say you have to get involved in the basketball community. You have to actually see where the opportunities are. And that's how I would always do it before too. When there was coaching academies or basketball academies, I would see, okay, who played overseas before? Who has a connection somewhere to like a university or a college? And then maybe that person has a connection somewhere, and then I can build that relationship in that way, versus you're just cold calling person to person to person, because it's all about relationships. Like you said, like you go to 3 agents because you trust them. So that's what it's about, is trying to think through that type of way.
Yeah. So man, I see it's 8:02 right now, and I'm normally on for an hour with everybody. I have an idea. I'm going to hit you up after this anyway. I have an idea because I think we could do some good things. Okay. And so I want to get you out of here and on with your day. I've got 5 phrases to end this. I've got like 5 phrases. You tell me the first thing that you think about when I tell you something, whatever I'm about to say, okay?
Speed round.
What was your welcome to overseas basket moment where you realize this is not what I'm used to?
A single phrase or a story?
No. You can say your answer. I'm just going to tell. That's my phrase. Like, what was your welcome to overseas basketball?
The first welcome to overseas basketball was when, so I went to El Salvador the first time, and I didn't play the first game. So I sat out and I had to watch my team play before I got my citizenship. Mm-hmm. And I remember just how bad the court was. Rims bent, concrete, so hot, no circulation in the gym. That was my welcome to overseas basketball moment, because it was like a sauna in there, and it was like nothing I'd ever experienced in Canada.
I'll tell mine real quick. So I'm going to do a shameless plug. This is my book, Same Name, Different Game, right? And I explained in the book my moment was, my welcome to European basketball moment was, I walked in the gym and it was smaller than my high school gym. I was playing in Austria. I went over to Austria my first season overseas, and I thought it was like the practice gym. And they were like, "Nah, this is our home
main
gym."
Show. Yeah.
I'm like, yo, my high school gym was literally bigger than this, right? That was my welcome to Europe moment, where I was just like, okay, this is different. I was like, wow, okay.
Man, correct me if I'm wrong, but you came from Arizona, no?
Yeah, I went to Arizona my freshman year, and I transferred. I was a dumbass and thought that I should be playing 30 minutes a game, and ended up transferring. I then went to Southern Utah. I went to a JUCO, and then I went to Southern Utah. And after Southern Utah, I came to UC.
Damn. Okay. Yeah, so that must have been even more different.
Yeah, like I'm playing a couple years ago, I'm playing in front of 18,500.
Yeah.
And I walk into a gym that seats literally like 500.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
it's crazy. This is a funny one. This will be a funny one for you. I did some research. Gatorade has about 16 different flavors. Why do you only drink the yellow kind?
The yellow, because it's hot like the sun. That's why. I don't know. I don't know why I like yellow.
Little Bird told me you only drink the yellow.
Yeah,
there's 16 flavors, man.
Yeah, that is true. Yellow, but if I'm really feeling spicy, I'll go with the blue sometimes.
Okay, I rock with the blue too. I rock with it. Give me a phrase. I already talked a little bit about one of my pet peeves, but I saved my extreme pet peeve for now. Give me a word or phrase or something that a client or somebody that you're talking to try to help that drives you absolutely nuts concerning overseas basketball. Something that somebody will tell you and it's like, come on.
Yo, you got connects? That's the opening line. No, hello, how are you? Hi, my name is just yo, you got connects? That drives me nuts. I'm probably not responding.
I'm with you on that one.
Yeah,
I am so with you on that one. Mine is when somebody writes to me and says, yo, I want to play in the EuroLeague. When they don't realize that the EuroLeague is not what they're talking. They're not, and I immediately know what they mean. They don't mean they want to play in the EuroLeague for FC Barcelona or Real Madrid. They want to play in Europe. But they're telling me, yo, I want to play in the EuroLeague. That fucking drives me nuts. Like, if you want to play overseas and you don't know what the EuroLeague is, I can't help you, dog. Like, dude, you want to go somewhere, learn about it before you.
Yeah.
That EuroLeague phrase, that drives me up the fucking wall. So those of you out there, if you contact me or Jose, understand the EuroLeague is its own entity, and that is a huge difference than playing in the Oberliga in Germany.
Yeah.
Huge difference. So don't use the EuroLeague. Use I want to play in Europe.
I didn't know that was a misconception. I didn't know that.
You would. I'm telling you, I get that all the time. I get that. I want to play in the EuroLeague. Dude, you got a 12-year gap period, and you're telling me you're trying to play for FC Barcelona?
Yeah.
Really? Yeah. Like 12-year gap? Really? No, it ain't happening. What do you think is one trait that is the key to your success?
My personal success. I would say my initiative, because I never really waited for let me phrase it. At the start, I did wait for like agents and people to help me. And then I quickly realized that's not how it's going to go. So I think maybe a combination of humility and my initiative, because even now when I'm doing all of these like podcasts and blogs and research, this is all stuff that doesn't really exist right now online, and kind of like demystifying what overseas basketball is about in the markets and the salary expectations, all these different things. So that takes a lot of initiative, because right now, I'm just basically doing it out of the goodwill of my heart. I don't really have a service that I charge for anything. I'm not really pulling anyone to anything. I'm just trying to help and educate other players in that way. So I would say, and all of this stuff really I just learned on my own. There wasn't really a mentor that I had. It was just trial and error, looking at what players are doing, what the different markets are doing, what's a trend that happens somewhere. Oh, okay. Now, why is it like that? And then you try and break it down analytically of why it is certain players succeed, why do other players not succeed. And a lot of that is just taking it on your own and not going to an agent being like, yo, why is this like it is? And they give you some answer and you're just like, oh, okay, I guess that's the way it is. Yeah. You have to actually, that's for me. Like, I always wanted to actually dig a bit deeper in that way. So I would say probably initiative and humility, I guess.
Last one, then I'll let you get out of here, man.
Okay.
What is next for Jose Colorado?
Oh, next. I would say next, I'm really hoping to, so for the past few months, I've kind of doubled down on the content and everything like that. And I really want to take this and make it like a full-time thing, a full-time brand, a full-time marketing thing to help as many players as I can. So I really want to push out more content and really just keep on advancing in that way. And like you were saying, you mentioned earlier if I'm still playing or not. To be honest, I really get a lot of joy and a lot of fulfillment helping players. Like there's a lot of good. I feel really good when a player comes to me and says, "Yo, what you told me was bang on, and I just signed this deal, and like I'm over here now, and thank you so much," and all that stuff. So, you know, that really is something that's pushing me right now, and I really want to help as many players as you can because, especially in overseas basketball, like we were mentioning earlier, there's athletic morality into it. So you only have so many years, and I know that I wasted like 3, 4, 5 years. If I could go back in time and I knew what I knew now, I would take many different steps to what I'm doing right now. So that's probably the biggest thing for me is just trying to educate as many players as possible because I know there's a player out there just like me who's 17, 18, and they're probably thinking right now, man, I want to go play pro one day, but how do I even do it or what do I do? And instead of them wasting 3 or 4 years, bam, maybe as soon as they're done college at 21, 22, they can get going and then they have 10 years, 12 years for their future too. So that's probably the biggest thing for me is just keep on pushing, keep on building.
That's dope, man. And I've seen that you really ramped up your game, man. And you make me want to ramp up my game. And you piss me off sometimes because you'll post something and I'll be like, damn, that's on my list. That's the next thing I was going to post. Damn, Jose, man. Now I got to wait a couple of weeks and let it die down.
Hey, just add your own flavor to it. That's it.
No, you know, and that's the thing is I really like what you do and you really changed a lot of your format and it's like way more professional and I love it, right? And for me, I do this also out of the goodness of my heart. What I did learn is that you can't help everybody, and a real reason why I actually started my consulting company. It's not like I'm making a lot of money from it. That's not it at all. But I realized that people sometimes do not appreciate what you do for them unless they pay for it. I got guys not coming to meetings, and I'm married. I got kids. You know, I'm in the basement of my house right now in my little man cave, when I could be upstairs, right, with my family. I come downstairs. I know I've got a meeting. Guys don't show up for me. Okay, what's up? You know, so that's why I've kind of parlayed it into, I don't even want to call it a side hustle because it's passion work for me. It's like, I'm like you. I do it out of the goodness of my heart. I'm not charging an exorbitant amount of money because most of the guys that I'm serving, my clients, don't have money like that. Why am I going to charge somebody $300 an hour for information when they're trying to get their stuff started? You know, so I make sure that I'm very accessible for everyone. But I really learned that the information that we have is very valuable, and especially because we are the only ones that do it, I would say, on a consistent basis. That people need to understand that this valuable information needs to be also understood and appreciated, you know. So but for me it's a passion work. It's definitely a passion work. I wrote this book in 2020. Well, actually I wrote it way before that, but I published it in 2020. I don't think I've broken even on it yet, and I don't care. I've given more books away than I've probably sold, and I don't care at all as long as it helps somebody. Like you said, somebody writes you and say, hey, I got a job, or I'm in the running for a job. Thank you. I see the things that you told me are actually for real. That's really enough for me. But it's just a passion work for me, and I appreciate the fact that you're doing it out of the same reasons. Eventually, I'm sure this is a business that could be very viable for and sustainable for livelihood. I think that very much so. I love my job. I love being a teacher, and so that's why that's not something that I would think to do full time. But I think it's a very viable business model, and but I'm glad that there's guys like you out there, and there's a couple other guys that I know that are doing it out of the goodness of their heart. And eventually, we all want to grow. We all want to get better at what we do. We want to have success. We want people to like what we do and appreciate what we do, but it has to start from your heart first. And if it's not there for your heart, if it's for money or something like that, then for me, that's not somebody I want to deal with.
Right. And there's nothing, just to be clear, there's nothing wrong with charging for a service or charging for your time, because ultimately you spent, I think I read you coached, you played how many years? 10
I
years, right?
played 13 years and I coach now.
Yeah. So you've had over 2 decades of experience, and they're going to get that. They're going to get 2 decades of experience within 30 minutes.
Right.
So it's like, you're not charging for the 30 minutes. You're charging that you can distill 20 plus years of your life into 30 minutes, and they don't have to spend 20 years of their life trying to figure it out.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, just to be clear, there's nothing wrong with that. And, it ultimately, as a player, I believe it is an investment, because it's difficult, because I kind of can understand it, because I came from a background when I didn't have a lot of money either. So I would always think like, oh, I'm not going to spend on that. Oh, that's a ripoff. Oh, that's that. But as you get older, and once you break free from that line of thinking, that type of poverty like mindset, then you can actually see that you do have to actually invest in yourself in order to get something. Scared money don't make money, right? So if you're always like on the edge of trying to invest in yourself, but you never actually do it, and you're just getting it bits and pieces here and there, eventually I'm just going to skip that line and be like, okay, what is the actual way to get overseas? Let's set a game plan up for me specifically. And that's my line of thinking, because we do this stuff for free on social media, on YouTube, on the blog. All that stuff is free. All that stuff is free. Anyone can get it. But if you want to go like behind the curtains, then we can go one-on-one, and we can break it down for you in that way and make it like very personalized for you. So it's just like where you are in your life and your mindset, and thinking about, how much time do you have to waste? How much time, not to waste, but how much time do you have to spare? How much time are you willing to commit onto it? And for me, that's all I want to say on that topic.
That's a great way to end it. Made you look. I definitely saw that.
Made you look.
We want Jose. We want to talk, man. So I'm gonna let you get out of here. We're over time actually. And I really appreciate you coming on and explaining your journey, your mindset, how you think, how you have a passion for what you do, and I really respect that, man. That means so much to me as an educator as well. That there are people out there that are willing to help people without a thing about the money or anything like that, some kind of ulterior motive thing like that. So I really appreciate you, man. I love the stuff that you do. Keep it up. It can be tiresome. It's a sometimes unthankful business what we do, but for that one call from that girl or that guy and says, "Hey, I got a job. Thank you for your help." That makes it all worth it. So keep it up, and we'll talk anyway. I really appreciate your time, and that's all I got for you, man. Get on up out of here. I'll say goodbye to the rest of the people.
All right, thanks so much, and thanks everyone for tuning in too.
For sure,
a lot of comments.
For sure.
Okay.
So everyone, I'm really happy with that one. Okay, I'm happy with all of them, but we went an hour and 18 minutes, and I probably could have gone another 30 or 40 minutes, right? So I think for those of you out there that are watching, you got a lot of information that can help you. We were talking about paying for services, for our services and things like that. I would say 90% of what I do is free. I've got the blog, I've got my website, I've got the Instagram stuff, I've got this podcast. I would say 90% of what I do is free and accessible, and that's what I'll always keep it as. And I hope those of you that are out there could really feel that he and I both have a passion for what we do, and we're willing to help. And please share this video, share our information that we give, the stupid reels that I do. These are all things that will help someone, and it's on us as a basketball community to help each other, and that's really important for me. So I will upload this video tomorrow on my YouTube channel, and so everyone will have access to that as well. And I got something up my sleeve for Jose. I'll talk to him about it a little bit later. But thank you for tuning in. If you were here for the whole hour and 19 minutes, I appreciate it. If you're here for just 30 seconds, I also appreciate it. I will be taking a little bit of a break. I will not have a guest next week, but the week after I'll be back at it. And yeah, I hope to see some of you back. And if you got any questions or whatever, you can always hit me up, DM me or whatever, and I'll be sure to get back to you. I get back to each and every person that writes me. So thank you for your time. Old head out.